Hello, Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, so that means it's time for a Friday Reads video, and this past week I have finished 2 books, and I'm currently reading 5 books, so let's go. So the first book that I finished was Jamaica Kincaid's slim little collection of short stories called At the Bottom of the River. These are very lyrical, they're very descriptive. They often use simple language, but they're still, again, quite lyrical and descriptive, and they're all pretty short, except for the very last one, which is the longest story that is like 20 pages long. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I feel that it is miscategorized as a short story collection. I feel like prose poetry would be a more accurate description of it. Because I don't think these pieces really work as stories. There is not much in the way of character development. There is no plot. Sometimes weird, magical, realistic things sort of happen. So again, I feel like prose poetry would be a better descriptor. And had it been marketed to me as prose poetry, it probably would have gotten a higher than 3-star rating, because I expected stories, but I got very lyrical, evocative, rich descriptions of things, which were lovely, and that's why I got 3 stars, but stories I did not get. So I would recommend this if you like atmospheric writing or very, again, sort of rich lyrical language. But yeah, if you think a short story should have clear, well-defined, developed characters and some kind of plot that moves them, that is not what you will get here. So 3 stars. The second book I finished this week, I read as an audio, or I listened to as an audiobook, and this was Twilight of Democracy. I think the subtitle is something like the Seductive Lure of Authoritarianism or something like that, by Applebaum. And I actually read this on the recommendation of Laila at Rainier Books. It was listed in his list of, 10 books you have to read for nonfiction November. And I saw that it was available through my library, and the audiobook is quite short. I think it's only about, not even 5.5 hours long or something like that. And so I checked it out and listened to it. So Applebaum reads it herself. I thought she did a good job with the narration. And so this is the first nonfiction book that I finished for Nonfiction November. And I quite liked it overall. So Applebaum talks about her experience living in Poland over several decades and how the political atmosphere has changed in Poland. She starts off talking about a party that she hosted right before the new millennium, right? So it's like December 31st, 1999, and how many people were gathered there, and then, 2 decades later, a lot of these people won't even speak to each other anymore and would be embarrassed to admit that they had, ever been in the same room together, even though they clearly shared some things in common back then, right? So that's where she starts. So she talks about Poland and its polarization and lean toward authoritarianism. She also talks about Hungary and Viktor Orban. She talks about Russia and Putin. She talks about Spain and the Vox Party, I think. She also talks about the UK and Boris Johnson, and then she also talks about the United States and Trump. And yeah, I was actually quite unsettled by this book because, I knew there were some commonalities between, say, Trump and Boris Johnson, and maybe some other people, some other world leaders, but again, the sort of commonalities she was drawing out between all of these countries that are pretty different in terms of their culture and values. I guess the thing they share in common is that they're all considered quote-unquote Western nations. But yeah, this drift toward authoritarianism that she talks about in all of these different places was quite disturbing to me, and it made me kind of wonder, well, is this drift toward authoritarianism and sort of fascist leanings, is that just inevitable, or is there anything that can be done to, make people decide to value differences and be okay with competing ideologies and value unity over these political divisions and existing deepening polarization. So I don't really know that there was an answer to that question, but I did find it compulsively listenable and it did disturb me. So I gave it 4 stars. I will say Applebaum is definitely like kind of on the conservative side, and she's a little too nostalgic for the Reagan era for my personal taste. But I did nevertheless find what she had to say quite useful. And again, all of the similarities between these different countries was disturbing. So 4 stars. Would definitely recommend it if you're interested in reading about fascism, authoritarianism, and things of that sort. Now, I don't think it's anything like, for example, Cousin from Always Doing, if you're watching this, I don't think you would necessarily get anything new out of this if this is a topic if this is like a topic you've already read about before. Like, I don't think she says anything necessarily mind-blowingly new or innovative about the authoritarian drift that we've seen over the past several years, but I did think it was an interesting look at her own sort of personal experience and observations. So 4 stars. So that was everything I finished this week. So on to my currently reading. So I did in fact start rereading Kindred because I'm teaching it in my African American Lit class right now. So we are approximately halfway through this. So I'll finish this by the time I do my next Friday reads check-in, and I am enjoying my reread of Kindred. It's a very good book. It's entertaining. It's fast-paced. You want to keep reading it. Octavia Butler smartly brings in a number of interesting issues in this book. By the way, if you somehow are not familiar with the plot of Kindred, it is about an African-American woman named Dana who lives in 1976, because this book was published, I think, in 1979, so that would have been contemporary for then, who is transported back in time to save the life of her white ancestor, who, when she first meets him, is the child in antebellum Maryland. Like, he's a child of a slave owner, and she basically has to keep this kid, Rufus, alive long enough so that he can eventually father a child with an enslaved woman who will eventually become Dana's direct ancestor. So that's the premise of the book. And so it very interestingly examines the relationship, especially between black women and white men. Because Dana herself is also married to a white man in the 1976 timeline, so it's a sort of interesting complication, this time travel back and forth. So anyway, yeah, if you haven't read this, it's really good. I highly recommend it. And yeah, I'm definitely enjoying my reread of it. I'm also still reading John Boyne's A Ladder to the Sky. I should be finished with this by the time I do my next Friday Reads video. I hope I'm finished with it by then, because I'm currently on page 231 of, how many pages does this have? 300 and, looks like about 360. So yeah, I definitely should finish this by the time I do my next Friday Reads video. I've had some issues with this book. I don't like that it's told from different narrative perspectives, because I liked the first narrator, and then when it suddenly changed to a different perspective, I was like, oh, what is this? And then I liked the second part, and then we got to the third part, and then it's like, okay, yet another narrator. But I have to say, I just got to the end of, I guess it's technically part 2 of the book. It's like part 1, interlude, part 2, interlude, part 3. So I just finished the long middle part 2, and I was not having the narrator of part 2. Especially when we got to the end. I was like, really? So I don't love the shifts in perspective. I find them sort of jarring, and then I need time to like get reinvested in yet another new narrator. I'm still finding this entertaining overall, and I'm glad that I'm reading it, but yeah, I think I'm probably not going to end up liking this as much as some other people have had because of the changes in perspective that just have sort of annoyed me. So anyway, so like I said, I should finish that up by next week. I'm also currently engaged in 2 buddy reads right now. So one is Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem. I'm doing this as a buddy read with Stephanie Cohen, commenter extraordinaire on BookTube. And we have our first check-in about this on Sunday. I am finding this a challenging read for several reasons, but I will refrain from saying more about it until Stephanie and I have done our actual first check-in. So more thoughts on this next week. And I've also just started Laila Lalami's The Moor's Account, which I'm doing as a buddy read with Melissa from Fully Booked. We're checking in about this, I think, tomorrow, so need to get cracking on this. So I really am not far enough into this to have any substantive thoughts, so more on this when I actually get further along. And then last but not least, I'm still reading the Essential Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I have 70 pages left in this book. I am vowing here and now I will be done with Emerson by the time I do my next Friday Reads video, because I've liked this, but I'm tired of reading it. I've been reading it since May. So literally, I've been reading this book since May. So I am going to finish the last 70 pages of Emerson this week. And then, yeah, next week we'll have a party or something. So that's it. That's everything that I either finished this week or I'm currently reading. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Please feel free to let me know that down in the comments below. Let me know what you are reading and enjoying for Nonfiction November or in Digithon or anything else that's going on right now. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call your mother?